or today's topic, which is the importance of probiotics.
Yes.
Yes.
It seems like you hear about probiotics whenever you're on antibiotics.
Right.
That's when I hear the most about them, because that's whenever, that's when I've heard the doctor say, it's the only time I've heard the doctor say, you might want to boost your probiotics because this is a strong antibiotic.
Yeah. And that's really where the problem starts.
Yeah.
Because when you look at that, people think, well, okay, I haven't had an antibiotic in 6 months or maybe a year. Your study some years back showed that if a person had an antibiotic therapy for whatever and did not replace their probiotics in any way, shape, or form, just kind of took it, okay, I'm going to let things happen as they happen, then you pick up some stuff through the food and so on and so forth. But they found that it could take, in some of these individuals, up to 2 years to reestablish, the look on his face, right? 2 years to reestablish a normal gut microbiome. That's
2 years.
unbelievable. Yeah.
And the bad thing is, one thing we see a lot of are people that have taken an antibiotic, did not replace their probiotics, and then a month or two later, sick again. And then a month or two later, sick again. It's a never-ending cycle, because then without probiotics, you do get infection after infection after infection.
Right.
They've even shown pneumonia increasing greatly after antibiotics, so many months later. So people don't realize how important it is. I even had somebody last week, and they said something about having a yeast infection. I said, did you take an antibiotic? Well, yeah. Why did you take a probiotic? Well, no, I didn't know I was supposed to. And I'm like, yes, every time you take an antibiotic, you got to make sure. Now, our belief is that probiotics are good for everybody every day. I mean, just everyday life, you should actually take probiotics, because we'll talk about some of the other things that actually deplete our microbiome. And one of the big things is antibiotics in food. People don't think about that.
Well, you're not supposed to think about that.
Yeah, people don't think about that.
You're not supposed to, that's it, yeah.
If you eat meat and the animal was given antibiotics, then you do get traces of antibiotics. I mean, there's traces of antibiotics in our water supply.
Yeah.
There's actually, pesticides are shown to deplete microbiome.
Yeah, I talk to people all the time, and they say, well, I've got this old antibiotic, or I've got this old drug, whatever, and they say, well, I'm just going to throw it down the toilet.
No.
What that does is that puts it in our water supply. Mm-hmm. So now all of a sudden, even though we didn't go out and try to take this stuff, we're getting trace amounts. And it goes back to, when you look at in medicine, there's an old type of medicine called homeopathy. And what they use is like a trace amount of something to stimulate a certain response in the human body. Well, same thing works with antibiotics in the water supply or food supply, and it's, there's rules and regulations, granted, that says, well, if you're raising, for instance, chickens for meat, then you're supposed to stop the antibiotic therapy for them, because they use antibiotic-laced food, because you got like 10 million birds in a little bitty place, and they're pooping, and it's a mess. Anyhow, so they're trying to keep down the infection. Same thing with cattle. If you've ever been to a feedlot, go to western Oklahoma, go to Enid specifically, just outside of town. Can't miss it. Can't miss a smell, I promise you. And you'll see, cattle, thousands, maybe 2,000 or 3,000 head of cattle in a big feedlot pen, and they're standing in manure up to their knees, And of course, they have to feed them antibiotics. Now, the problem is they're supposed to stop feeding them these antibiotics right before slaughter. Oh no, honey, they take them right off that feedlot, right in there, pop them in the head, and next thing you know, they're in the butcher shop. And so we're getting this stuff, and the people that raise poultry, same thing. They say they do, but it's like I knew a guy years ago that raised turkeys for commercial turkeys for one of the other companies, and he had a contract with them, and they gave him the food. They supplied him the little birds, the divvies, and then he raised them up in his barns. And then they supplied him the food and so on. He had no idea whether that stuff had antibiotics in it or not. He said that they really didn't change the food from the time they started to the time they finished. All came in a white sack, blah, blah, blah. He said, I don't know. Because I asked him, I said, you stopped doing it? I have no idea.
So that's one good reason to buy organic.
Right. Exactly.
because it's not what you're getting more nutrition. You're getting you're lacking things that are in it. But anyway, back to probiotics.
Yeah.
The reason you kill the probiotics is we're getting antibiotics everywhere.
Yeah.
We really are. And pesticides, you're kind of getting everywhere. And then there's medications like antacids, which really mess up your microbiome.
Oh yeah, big time.
And how many people out there are even doing over-the-counter antacids? Lots. So that messes up your microbiome. So we're messing up our microbiome, and we know that our microbiome is important, not just for keep from getting sick. There's a lot of things that the microbiome is good for.
Yeah, you know, for instance, it helps you digest your food. If you have what we call sterile gut, and they've done this in mouse models, where they have a poor little mouse that they completely kill everything in its gut, and so it doesn't have any microbiome whatsoever. They can't digest their own food. I mean, they literally can't digest their food. So we have to have it for food digestion. We have to have it to stimulate our immune system. I mean, you know, that's constant. That's a biggie. Matter of fact, they say that somewhere between 70 and 80% of your immune system is in your gut, because how it stimulates your immune system to respond to certain bad bacteria, et cetera, viruses and so on. And the gut's loaded with things like viruses and fungi and you name it.
Right, because there's not just beneficial bacteria, there's beneficial fungus.
Yeah.
We actually use one all the time called Saccharomyces boulardii. It is a beneficial yeast that eats C. diff. So people that are on antibiotics, it's another really good probiotic to take because it'll actually help reduce the risk of C. diff.
Yeah.
And we even have people that have C. diff that cannot get rid of it and come in and we use it along with a broad spectrum probiotic at high doses, and it does help C. diff. So you have to, in order to help your immune system, you got to have the right type of microbiome in your gut.
Well, C. diff is Clostridia, and there's good and bad Clostridias, but Clostridia difficalis, okay, that's C. diff. C. diff is one very common problem that you see with people that have been on long-term antibiotics, and it can produce some really nasty side effects.
It can actually kill you.
It can actually, yes, it can.
I've seen people that were just about
on death's door now.
On death's door. But it's a bacteria that we probably have in small amounts.
Oh, we do.
We do. We have it in the gut. It's just that our good bacteria and microbiome keep it under control. And that's with a lot of different things out there, not just C. diff. It's one of the things that it keeps under control. But C. diff is just one of those, when it gets out of control, it just doesn't make you not healthy. It makes you really, really sick.
And it's hard to get under
control. But we see a lot of people with C. diff. You used to not hear about it unless it was in a hospital setting. That was the people that had the IV antibiotics that really wiped out everything. Although now we're seeing it in everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, you really are seeing a lot of C. diff.
And that's back to the balance thing. You know, she mentioned before the break, you know, she was talking about, you know, the beneficial yeast that we use for that, you know, the Boulardii, Saccharomyces boulardii. And, you know, it's one that, it's a mortal enemy of Clostridia.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it just sits around waiting for Clostridia to come by.
It eats it.
Yeah, it eats it.
So
it's one of its food
sources.
sources.
C. diff.
Yeah.
So if you take enough of it, it'll eat up the C. diff to where it makes it disappear.
Yeah.
So the good thing, like I said, there's always beneficials do a lot of different things. And we've talked about getting sick, and we've talked about, you know, things like the immune system, but a lot of people don't think about brain chemistry.
Ooh.
Brain chemistry is definitely linked with your microbiome.
It sure is. You know, one of the biggies, there's, and of course everybody says, well, you know, I eat some yogurt or something. Well, you're getting a few lactobacillus type, but just a few. A couple of 100,000 maybe in a cup, if you're lucky, when you need billions, okay?
Yeah.
It's sort of like the national debt. It gets into the trillions, okay, real quick, okay? But you know, if you take something like that, you're getting the lactobacillus. Well, that's part of it, okay, because when you look at the lactobacillus, that helps you produce the serotonin. Okay, well, that's a good neurochemical, right? Or it helps the brain kind of function better. But then there's the other stuff that we need, the calmative side. That's more of an excitatory side. We need the calmative side, which is more under the GABA or the gamma aminobutyric acid. What produces that? Oh, the bifidobacterium. So if you don't get the bifidobacterium along with the lactobacillus, I'm sorry, but you're just not getting a very good balance on that thing. And that's when we start seeing these imbalances causing all sorts of like depression, anxiety. I mean, they've linked all this stuff. They've even linked some of the microbiome back to things like Alzheimer's.
They have.
Kind of scary, but and we're seeing such a rise in Alzheimer's. I mean, I've been doing this for well over 40 years. Okay, and that 40 years ago, you didn't see the amount, especially in younger people, that we see now, with some pretty solid dementia type problems coming on.
Yeah, one of the studies showed that the Klebsiella is actually one of the things that they're linking with dementia, possibly because of the way it crosses the brain barrier, but they think the whole thing starts because the microbiome is messed up. So the microbiome is messed up, then you get leaky gut, and then leaky gut allows things to get out in the system and then cross the brain barrier. So again, got to have that microbiome. So if you don't have the microbiome, it affects everything. Like I said, the brain is real important. A study I saw that came out within the last recently, month or two, also talked about kids with attention deficit and autism
Yes.
being linked with microbiome.
Yeah.
Everybody knows gut issues are. Everybody knows about the gut issues. Everybody's heard about the immune system. People don't think about things like attention deficit and autism and dementia and things that severely affect the brain. Does make a difference in your microbiome. So it is one of those things that we tell people, overall health, I think everyone should be on a probiotic.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's
And a pretty decent amount.
And yes, we
mean,
kind of start at 50 billion. We go up from there.
Y'all are gonna have me taking pills after pills. So does the probiotic, the healthy probiotic, the healthy microbiome, does it help when your bodies are trying to absorb those nutrients, the other nutrients that we're taking?
It actually definitely helps absorption.
Yeah, it's just like, for instance, everybody talks about how good blueberries are for you, right? Got all the proanthocyanidins and all that stuff in there. Well, if you don't have a healthy microbiome, you can't absorb the good stuff, because what happens is our gut can't digest this stuff, just can't break it down. But the microbiome says, whoo, blueberries are coming, and boy, they love it. So they'll just chew it up, spit it out, and what they get, actually, if you will, leftovers from them chewing on it, is what we can absorb.
Yeah.
And that's the good stuff. And without it,
Without the microbiome, you can't absorb blueberries.
Right.
So you start looking at it, and there's so much to the microbiome.
Yeah.
And people don't pay attention to it, to me, enough.
oh no.
No.
It's, and like I say, when we know that, unfortunately, our packaged processed food supply, and when you look at 74% of the people out there are eating packaged processed foods.
Right.
You can raise your hands, we know you're there. 74%, think about that, 74% of the food eaten in America is packaged processed food. And what is that going to do to your microbiome? Horrible things.
Not good.
Because it's a lot of that is
you want real food, like we always talk about.
Right,
You want
real
a real
food.
food diet.
Yeah.
You do want a real food, but and eat foods that actually have probiotics in them. A lot of people don't eat stuff like that anymore. Sauerkraut.
I love it.
Kimchi.
Yeah.
You can get apple cider vinegar. Actually has some, as long as it's the organic and the raw.
Has the mother in it.
In the
they
mother,
call it.
you actually can get some probiotics that way. So you can get your probiotics that way. I still recommend supplementing because people don't eat enough of those foods. They really don't anymore. Yogurt has some. Now you can get some yogurts that are really high. They just don't taste very good, and people don't eat them. I
Because then
even
you have to
myself
backfill with
I even
sugar.
bought one myself because I'm like, oh my gosh, this has billions of probiotics. I'm going to get this to add to our probiotics. Woo! I couldn't eat it.
It's an acquired taste.
It was pretty hard.
It's
So,
an acquired
but that's the kind, that's what people should be
Yeah,
eating, the
but-
fermented foods that actually do have the good bacteria in it.
Yeah, we
and then
need to
heating it in the microwave will destroy it.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the thing, is the modern day conveniences a lot of times are not great for our
Right.
microbiome.
We probably need to take our food supply back about 75 to 100 years. And seriously, because back then, they
Be
ate
better for
real
health.
food.
Yeah.
Well, that would mean that we have to take a lot of other things back. Is that you're not actually saying don't take antibiotics.
No.
If you need an antibiotic, definitely take it, because antibiotics help with bacterial infections, and some of the bacterial infections can get out of hand, and you don't want that either. What you don't want is to take it for viruses, or take it just because I'm not feeling really well, I have this old antibiotic in the cabinet, let me just take it. Don't do that, because if you don't need an antibiotic, you do not want to take it, and you don't want to just take them for no reason. And we have people that come in that actually even says, my doctor said I have a virus, and they gave me this antibiotic. if you truly just have a virus, you should not be taking antibiotics. And this is coming out from the biggest health institutions around the country. Your Mayo Clinic, they're all saying it's overprescribed. It is overprescribed. If you do not need an antibiotic, you do not take it. If you truly have a virus, antibiotics do not help viruses.
Well, that's why we're not getting antibiotics for the flu. Or
Right,
we're getting
exactly.
antibiotics for COVID. You
Right.
don't get antibiotics for that because it's virus.
Right.
Now, if you have a secondary infection with
A secondary infection
that's
is different. It is different.
Different.
But again, and then definitely don't just say, I have it in the cabinet, I'm not feeling very well, and just go take it. That's what we hear people doing all the time.
Yeah, or throw it in the toilet. You don't want to
No,
take
don't
it.
throw it in the toilet
Don't
either.
put it in
Okay.
the toilet
don't wanna
because we
throw it in
don't
the
want
toilet.
it.
I don't want it, yeah.
You can. There's take backs all the time for drugs and
Oh, they
antibiotics
have
and things like
places
that.
But like
you
I
drop
said,
it off,
there's a need for it. I had a tooth problem last year, and it's probably one of the first antibiotics I'd taken in 30 years. And I took way more than I'd like. But at the same time, because I was taking it, I was taking spore probiotics, which actually are resistant to antibiotics, which they don't colonize, but yet they help you at the time. So they don't get killed by the antibiotics. I was taking the Saccharomyces boulardii, which is the beneficial yeast to keep down C. diff. I was taking a broad spectrum probiotic as far away from the antibiotic as I could. So I took huge amounts, because I knew
Seriously.
what it could do and the problems you can have if you don't.
Is there a problem if you take too much?
No, not really. I mean,
Is it
most
even possible?
Probably.
Occasionally, somebody has a problem with a huge amount of, but
Typically, it's a
Yeah.
certain strain that
Yeah,
you're taking.
certain strains.
There's probably going to cause more problems than anything. You know, there are certain strains that will beneficial, but if you kind of overdo it, you know, it can cause some problems like diarrhea, something like that. You know,
there are so many strands of beneficial bacteria, and there's another one that's getting a lot of research recently called Akkermansia. In Akkermansia, they've actually found that in people that don't lose weight easy, they usually have a low amount, and people that are skinny tend to have a higher amount. They're also linking that same bacteria, lack of it, to dementia and even attention deficit in kids. So the Akkermansia is one of those ones you see in tons out there, and it's not normally in your regular probiotics. We
No.
do have it by itself. We do have it. We have a couple different formulas with the Akkermansia in it. But there's so many different things. There's patented strands of the Lactobacillus acidophilus. So if you look, there's so much research coming out. They're getting very, very specific on different ones. We do like broad spectrum probiotics just for everyday use, but when you start getting into certain issues, you can get a little bit more specific. We even have one that's for people that have a histamine reaction, because some probiotics can produce histamine. So people with histamine reactions say probiotics make me worse. Well, that's because they're taking the ones that can produce it along with the ones that can help it. But then there's some that actually are like antihistamines. So you gotta, there's different things. That's what we're there for. We're there to help you figure out which one's best for you.
Sure,
Right.
absolutely. Looks like we have a couple
Yep.
of questions here. When is the best time to take probiotics, and does it have any effects with other medication?
Well, you know, the best time to take it is essentially, I always tell people, with food, because that's how we normally inoculate our body, is food that we eat. Has like take
Right.
yogurt. If it was that yogurt that she didn't like the taste of, okay, loaded with probiotics, so it was food, and I think that's the best time to take it. So,
Although
yeah,
there are people out there that disagree. You see both ways of
Oh, yeah. I
experts.
mean, yeah, it's-
some
it-
say empty stomach, some say with food. I say just take it.
Just-
make
yeah,
sure
it-
you take it.
As long as
And-
you're taking it.
Right.
Right.
And any effects with medication, I've not seen where it interacts with any medications. And if
Just
you
your
take
antibiotic.
an antibiotic, when you're on an antibiotic, take it as far away from it as you can, just like I mentioned that I did. So you just take it as far away from it. So if you're going to take antibiotics twice a day, you take it in the middle of the day.
yeah,
Sure.
So
But you know, as far as like your blood pressure medication, things like that,
no, it's not going to hurt.
Well, okay, here's another one. How would you know if you have C. diff?
Okay. Well, for one, there's a test.
There
You
is.
can actually do a stool test for C. diff. That's the definitive way. But the symptoms of C. diff, extreme diarrhea, and I mean extreme, and the smell will usually knock you down. That's
Yeah.
that's what
Oh,
we hear
yeah.
from everybody that has it. So extreme diarrhea that just, and it makes you really sick.
yeah.
But there is a test. That's how you really know, is the testing.
So will definitely not be something where you're thinking, I wonder if there's something wrong. You'll know.
You'll know.
That one, you rarely see C. diff where people didn't know they had it.
Yeah. I'm Dr. Fox, and I want to thank you for watching this YouTube video. Be sure and hit that subscribe button, hit that little bell so you'll be notified on any upcoming videos that we have coming up. And thank you again for watching our YouTube videos.